my new manager presented my 3-year project to the board, taking full credit and earning a promotion. He smugly told me, "That's how business works, kid." What he didn't know was that I had prepared for exactly this scenario, and his next presentation would be his last. My name is Arthur Thompson, and at 37 years old, I'd spent 12 years climbing the ranks in the tech industry. As a senior software engineer at Nexus Dynamics, I thought I'd seen every type of backstabbing manager imaginable. I was wrong. 3 years ago, I started developing what would become the most revolutionary inventory management system our industry had ever seen. The Smart Inventory Management System used advanced AI and machine learning algorithms to predict supply chain disruptions, optimize warehouse layouts, and reduce operational costs by up to 40%. I'd poured my heart, soul, and countless sleepless nights into this project, coding every algorithm myself, designing the entire architecture from scratch. The system was my baby. I'd filed the patent applications, written every line of documentation, and even presented the initial concept to our CEO, Michael Harrison, who'd given me carte blanche to develop it. For 3 years, I worked essentially alone, occasionally collaborating with other departments but maintaining complete technical ownership of the project. 6 months ago, everything changed when Nexus Dynamics hired Brad Wilson as our new engineering manager. Brad was 32, fresh out of his MBA program, and had somehow convinced upper management that he was exactly what our department needed. He had zero hands-on engineering experience but spoke fluent corporate buzzword and knew how to play the politics game. From day one, Brad showed an unusual interest in my project. He scheduled weekly meetings to better understand the technical aspects, requested detailed documentation about every component, and constantly asked probing questions about the system's capabilities. Like an idiot, I was flattered by his attention and eager to share my work with someone in leadership. "Arthur, this is incredible work," he'd say during our meetings. "I want to make sure I fully understand every aspect so I can properly represent your achievements to the board." He seemed genuinely impressed by the system's complexity and potential market value. I should have been suspicious when Brad started asking for access to my source code repositories. "For backup purposes," he claimed, "we need to ensure business continuity." Against my better judgment, I granted him read access to everything. The core algorithms, the database schemas, the user interface designs, even my personal development notes. The board presentation was scheduled for a Tuesday in March. I'd been preparing for weeks, excited to finally showcase 3 years of work to the executives who would decide the system's future. On Monday afternoon, Brad called me into his office with an unexpected announcement. "Arthur, I've decided to handle tomorrow's presentation myself," he said casually, not even looking up from his laptop. "You've done great work, but I think it's better if management presents this to the board. You understand." I was stunned. "Brad, this is my project. I know every detail, every line of code. Shouldn't I be the one presenting?" He finally looked at me with a condescending smile. "Arthur, you're a brilliant engineer, but presentations to the board require a different skill set. Trust me, I've got this handled." I left his office feeling sick to my stomach, but what choice did I have? He was my manager and I needed this job. I spent that night tossing and turning, wondering if I should fight his decision or trust that he'd properly credit my work. The next morning, I sat in the back of the conference room as Brad took the stage. What happened next still makes my blood boil. For 45 minutes, Brad presented my system as if he'd conceived and developed it himself. He walked through my algorithms, explained my design decisions, and detailed my innovation as though he'd personally written every line of code. "Over the past 6 months," he told the board with absolute confidence, "I've been developing a revolutionary inventory management system that will transform how our clients handle supply chain operations." 6 months. He'd been at the company for exactly 6 months. The board was mesmerized. CEO Harrison called it the most innovative solution he'd seen in years. CFO Patricia Wells immediately started discussing market potential and licensing opportunities. When Brad finished, he received a standing ovation from the entire board. "Brad, you didn't mention that I developed that system," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me with a smirk I'll never forget. "Arthur, that's how business works, kid. Welcome to the real world. You do the technical work, management takes the credit. That's the hierarchy." I walked back to my desk feeling humiliated and betrayed, but Brad had made one critical error. He assumed I was just another naive engineer who'd roll over and accept defeat. What he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for exactly this scenario from the moment he started showing interest in my project. You see, I'm not just a good engineer. I'm a paranoid engineer. 3 years of protecting my intellectual property had taught me never to trust anyone completely, not even my own company. So I'd built several safeguards into my system that only I knew about. First, embedded deep in the core code was an ownership verification system that I called the creator's signature. Every time the system booted up, it checked for my personal authentication key. Without it, the system would display a watermark identifying me as the original developer. That's when Harrison made the announcement that shattered me. "Brad, this is exceptional work. Effective immediately, you're promoted to Senior Engineering Manager with a base salary increase and a $75,000 innovation bonus. Congratulations." I sat there in stunned silence as my 3 years of work earned someone else a promotion and a bonus that could have changed my life. After the meeting, as board members congratulated Brad, I approached him in the hallway. Second, I'd included what I privately called a demonstration mode that could only be activated with my master password. This mode would override all normal functions and display detailed information about the system's true development history, complete with timestamps, code commits, and documentation proving my authorship. Third, and most importantly, I'd never actually transferred the patent applications to Nexus Dynamics. According to my employment contract, I had 60 days after project completion to formally assign intellectual property rights to the company. Since the project was still technically in development, those patents remained in my name. Brad's promotion celebration lasted exactly 1 week. The following Tuesday, he was scheduled to give a live demonstration of his system to Megacorp, a potential client worth $10 million in annual contracts. I called in sick that morning claiming food poisoning, but I was actually sitting in my car in the parking garage with my laptop, connected to the office Wi-Fi. At 2 p.m., I watched through the conference room's video feed as Brad confidently introduced the smart inventory management system to Megacorp's executives. He walked them through the interface, explained the benefits, and basked in their impressed reactions. "Now," Brad said with his trademark arrogant smile, "let me show you the system in action with some real-time data processing." That's when I activated demonstration mode. Suddenly, the main display screen went black for 3 seconds before displaying a large professional header. "Smart Inventory Management System, created and developed by Arthur Thompson, Senior Software Engineer, Nexus Dynamics." Brad's face went white. He frantically clicked buttons, trying to regain control, but I'd locked him out completely. The screen now showed a detailed timeline of the project's development, including my original design documents, code commit logs, and even photos of my handwritten algorithm sketches from 3 years ago. "What's happening?" asked Megacorp's CTO, looking confused. Brad stammered something about technical difficulties while sweat beaded on his forehead. But I wasn't done yet. The system began playing a recorded message I'd embedded months earlier. "Attention! This system was developed solely by Arthur Thompson over a 3-year period. Any claims of alternative authorship are fraudulent. For technical support or inquiries, please contact the actual developer." The room fell silent. Megacorp's executives looked at each other, then at Brad, who was now visibly panicking. CEO Harrison, who was attending virtually, unmuted himself with a voice like ice. "Brad, what exactly is going on here?" Before Brad could answer, the system displayed its final surprise. Email screenshots showing Brad's requests for my source code, his meeting notes where he'd copied my explanations word for word, and most damning of all, a recorded conversation from our last one-on-one meeting where he'd explicitly stated his plan to take point on presenting the inventory system to maximize leadership visibility. I'd been recording our meetings for weeks, perfectly legal in our state with single-party consent. Megacorp's CTO stood up slowly. I think we need to postpone this demonstration until we can speak with the actual system developer. The video feed cut out, but I could hear raised voices through the conference room walls. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Harrison. "Arthur, I need you in my office immediately." I drove back to the office and found Harrison waiting with our head of HR, Patricia Wells, and our chief legal officer. Brad was conspicuously absent. "Arthur," Harrison began, his voice carefully controlled, "we've just learned some very disturbing information about the inventory management system. Can you explain what happened in that conference room?" I calmly walked them through everything. My 3 years of development work, Brad's systematic theft of my documentation, his fraudulent presentation to the board, and my decision to protect my intellectual property using built-in safeguards. "I have all the evidence," I said, pulling out a folder I'd prepared months earlier. Original design documents with my signature and timestamps, patent applications in my name, source code commits linked to my personal accounts, and recordings of Brad admitting he planned to take credit for my work. Patricia Wells reviewed the patent documents and went pale. "Arthur, these patents are still in your name. The company doesn't legally own this system." That's when I dropped the final bombshell. "I'm willing to assign the patents to Nexus Dynamics under one condition. I want Brad removed from his position, and I want to be compensated fairly for my work." Harrison didn't hesitate. "Brad's employment is terminated immediately. What compensation are you seeking?" "His position, his salary, and the innovation bonus that should have been mine in the first place." "Done." Brad was escorted out of the building that afternoon. Security footage later confirmed that he'd been regularly accessing my computer after hours, copying files to external drives. The legal department found enough evidence to pursue criminal charges for corporate espionage, though they ultimately decided to focus on protecting the company's reputation instead. 2 weeks later, I was presenting the system to Megacorp myself. This time, there were no technical difficulties, no mysterious messages, and no questions about authorship. We signed the $10 million contract that same day. 6 months later, I was promoted to Chief Technology Officer. The Smart Inventory Management System became the cornerstone of Nexus Dynamics' product line, generating over $50 million in revenue its first year. I've since filed 12 additional patents, all properly assigned to the company with appropriate compensation agreements. As for Brad, he struggled to find work in the tech industry. Funny how word travels fast in a small professional community, especially when someone's been caught committing corporate fraud. Last I heard, he was working as a project manager at a consulting firm, far from any actual technology development. 3 months after his termination, Brad sent me a LinkedIn message. "Arthur, I think there was a misunderstanding about what happened. I never meant to take full credit for your work. Maybe we could grab coffee and clear the air." I never responded. There was nothing to misunderstand. He'd stolen my work, taken my promotion, and told me that's how business works, kid. I'd simply shown him how engineering actually works, with preparation, documentation, and safeguards against exactly his type of behavior. The best part? Every time someone new joins our engineering team, I tell them Brad's story as a cautionary tale about protecting their intellectual property. It's become legendary in our company. The manager who tried to steal credit from an engineer and ended up losing everything. Looking back, I realize Brad taught me an invaluable lesson, just not the one he intended. He showed me that in the real world, you can't rely on honesty and hard work alone. You need to be smart, prepared, and always ready to defend what's yours. The look on Brad's face during that presentation when he realized I had prepared for exactly his scenario? Pure terror, followed by the crushing realization that his next presentation would indeed be his last. That's how engineering works, kid. Welcome to the real world.